one last question, how would Lea from that time feel about now, though? What do you think she would write?
I think I would still write that, as I write in Free, that there is a transition in Albania going on, but without a sense of where it's transitioning to, in the sense that I feel that there is a nation that is still in search of its identity, in search of its conscience, and in search of its political soul, with the added element that there is also lost faith in any political vision or project, and also a faith lost in the collective ability to resolve problems. And that's why I think in Albania, exit has become the option for people, because we have lost the faith in the social contract and in a collective that brings people together. And when people lose faith in the collective, then the only thing they do is to just leave and find another collective to, of course, find another kind of failure, but they don't know that while they're there. So I think the most important, as I see it, one of the most important gaps in Albania right now is this lack of belief in political representation and lack of belief in political action, which comes from a variety of sources, but where the Albanian past plays a really important role.
This is something actually I wanted to ask you as well. I've gone completely off script, off topic here, but I've often thought and I've written about how I think that this failure to really deal with what happened during communism has had sort of an intergenerational effect on people, which is also perhaps driving people to leave the country. I am sure this is this question has a very, very long answer, but is that something you potentially agree with as well? What are your thoughts?
I think it's both what happened during communism, but also what happened in the transition. Mm-hmm. So what happened during communism is that you would individualize and you turn individuals into the families that they came from. And so people weren't really responsible for themselves, but it was always, what biography do you have? Which family do you come from? Is this a good or a bad family? And how do they contribute to the state? Which led to a constant finger pointing and blame game that continues even after the post-communist transition, this idea that the individual is responsible for the entire collective position of their family, and it's very hard for the individual to be separated from that. To some extent, that was also, I think, reflected in some of the reception around my book, where people were saying, why does she, coming from this family, have certain views, even though even the views in the family, as I try to explain in the book, were very complex and multifaceted, so there was a plurality of voices. But I think the tendency during communism was to really crash the individual on the collective, and that came with a huge burden. What happened in the transition, I think, was also played a really major role, because the idea was that everything associated to the state and to the collective was negative. And so the state had to be destroyed in every aspect. And sometimes I think now in post-communist Albania, we're still undoing the damage of some of the things that we did to the public goods in that transition period, schools, health services, and so on. And so that belief in the collective was, as a result of the transition, also completely shaken and undermined. So it came from both periods. Mm-hmm. And I think what we're experiencing now is a legacy of what happened during communism, but also the inability to rectify the tragedies of communism in a right way, and going in the extreme opposite, individualistic, almost war of all against war, where only the individuals was seen as the center of society. And therefore the message to the individual was, well, unless you fend for yourself, no one is going to come and save you, because of course the state's never going to do it. And that's where I think leads to then individuals just leaving the country and thinking, okay, now I'm going to fend myself and find my own solution. So it's completely understandable, and I think has very deep roots in history, both during communism and after.
And this is something which was woefully not understood by the British media when there was this big problem with migration last year. They were sort of calling me up and asking, they wanted a 30-second reason for why people were leaving the country. And it's very difficult to explain to them, actually. There's not just one reason. There are many, many complex reasons, and a lot of them are not going to make the headlines you want, unfortunately.
Yeah, and also one has to play a different role in these different societies. So if you're in a society of emigration, you have to hold your government accountable for why people are leaving, and try to explain the reasons and try to construct politics that is more conducive to people engaging with it in the right way. If you're in a country of immigration, you have a problem of exclusion, and also the impact of racism and xenophobia on existing immigrants, on the children of existing immigrants, and the impact that has in society in Britain. And so one has to move with a different kind of criticism, which isn't about, why are people leaving, but it's about why are you as a government responding to immigration in this light rather than widening and seeing the wider problem, how immigration isn't just a problem of membership, it's a wider problem of justice. And unless you as a country contribute to remedying these injustices at a wider level, there will always be a problem of migration. So I think the parameters of the debate are slightly different depending on whether you're a country of emigration or immigration, and the kind of role of the intellectual also has to be slightly different depending on who you're tackling and how you're talking about the causes of it.